One of the biggest fears in Syria after the fall of Bashar al-Assad is the possible descent into chaos and lawlessness. Security structures have collapsed, and Hayat Tahrir al-Sham have been brought in from their stronghold in the north to fill the void. They're led by former dissident police officers and non-commissioned officers who say they are familiar with the work. Abu Yaqeen and his special forces are here to investigate the arson and looting of one of the former regime's so-called political intelligence headquarters. This office was in charge of dealing with political dissent, including the arrest, detention and punishment of anyone who opposed the Assad regime. They're trying to find out who set fire to the building and salvage any records.
These are lists of detainees, including some of our fighters, and names of some women. These are decrees and orders showing the criminal regime was in touch with terrorist groups, including ISIL and the Syrian Democratic Forces. The regime and the Russians were using ISIL.
The volume of work and the complexity of the task posed challenges, says Abu Ahmed, who spends his day dealing with people with individual complaints.
We handled lots of complaints and arrested many criminals who committed offences such as burglary and car theft. In the first few days, we managed to run this office with nothing. There was no paperwork, no staff, no weapons. All the bureaus and equipment were destroyed, looted, or set on fire.
Abu Ahmed tells me that even though his teams are starting from scratch here in Damascus, they have enough experience to draw on from their period of self-rule in the north. He says that in just 7 years, they managed to turn Idlib into one of the safest places in Syria. On the streets, people seem satisfied with the calm, but some have lingering concerns.
No
one expected that people could resume their normal daily life so fast. The streets are full and we're back to business as usual. No doubt things will not be as perfect as we want them to be so early. We all need to cooperate and contribute to efforts to restore stability.
Thank God the situation is fine at the moment, but no one can judge until after March the 1st when the transition is over. Then we'll see who's doing what.
And that, we're told, includes possible sabotage by Assad loyalists. For peace and stability to flourish under the new administration, it will have to root out all traces of the former regime. But the Assad family was in power here for more than half a century, and Syrians know it's a process that will take time. Mohamed Vall, Al Jazeera, Damascus.
Rob Geist Pinfold is a lecturer in peace and security at Durham University, and he joins us from Durham in the United Kingdom. Good to speak to you again, Rob. So the new government in Syria, it says that one of its key priorities is to rebuild and reform institutions such as the police, as we saw there in Mo's report. But how necessary is it to incorporate groups other than HTS?
Well, it's absolutely essential, Laura. First of all, there's the legitimacy question. Who does HTS speak for? So at the moment, they're doing quite a good job of stamping their authority down throughout Syria, apart from the northern areas, which are being occupied by Turkey, and the eastern areas, which are under Kurdish control. But this is a group that only has around 20 to 30,000 fighters. It is not the top two biggest rebel groups in Syria, and that's discounting all of the former Assad regime fighters as well. So it's going to have to, by pragmatic necessity, work with other groups. And the problem is that's not what it did in Idlib. Yes, it made Idlib very safe. Yes, it was performing relatively well and people were relatively happy with governance in Idlib. But at the same time, it monopolized power. It was willing to share with civilian technocrats, but not with any other opposition parties or opposition groups. Its leadership was male dominated and completely dominated by HTS. And that's just not something that's going to work elsewhere in Syria, particularly in more liberal and urban areas like Damascus and Aleppo, for instance.
And if we look at the politics now, and plenty of movements there as well, Ahmed al-Shara has been holding his first meetings with regional leaders. Interesting that he chose to meet the Druze leader, Walid Jumblat, from Lebanon.
Yeah, I think that serves both parties very well, to be honest, because Walid Jumblat is obviously a Druze leader, but he's also a kind of Lebanese elder statesman. Even people who don't get on with him politically will respect him just because he's been around for so long. So he's kind of a good neutral figure to go to Damascus and meet al-Shara. At the same time, it serves al-Shara meeting someone from the Druze minority. That's the way to relay fears and to signal internally and externally that HTS will not be going after minorities like Alawites or Druze or Christians, for example. But I also think meeting with a Lebanese politician is a different kind of meeting to his meetings, for example, with the Saudis or with the US or with Turkey, because at the end of the day, there's often been this kind of perception that he who controls Syria controls Lebanon as well. You know, they're two separate countries, but of course, this is why Iran was so interested in controlling Syria, in order to have a route to keep Hezbollah well-funded, well-equipped, and powerful beyond its means within Lebanon. So the question is, what kind of Syria-Lebanon relationship will we be seeing? We haven't seen HTS or al-Shara's vision for that, so it's something that's very much in play and up for negotiation at the moment.
And what do you make with the speed with which Ahmed al-Shara has been moving through this transition? Is it necessary to move so fast and keep up this momentum?
I think it is, because he will have, at the moment, he has goodwill on his side. He has sort of the public support on his side, but that is only short-lived. Once things start to go wrong, people start to get angry very fast. You know, once, for example, if the situation is worse under HDS than it was under Assad, people will get very angry. If minority groups feel like they're not being, they're not safe, then things will get nasty. If people of all religions feel like they're not safe in the streets, then they start to lose faith in the regime. So al-Shara has to basically legitimize himself both internally and externally. And that's a very, very tall order for a group with only 20 to 30,000 fighters that was formerly part of ISIL and al-Qaeda. So, you know, that's quite the resume to be coming with. And the fact that he's managed to have all of these very high profile meetings last week, mainly with big players outside the region, but now sort of shuffling inwards to look at people inside the region, like the Saudis, the Lebanese delegation, and of course the Turks throughout this. It shows that he is keeping all these groups on side for now, but I think it is important to stress that in, for example, meeting with the Turks and the Americans, he'll be hearing different demands and he'll be saying different things. The question is what he actually does in practice and who he is going to have to let down.
Rob Geist, Pinfold, many thanks indeed for taking the time to speak to us here on Al Jazeera.
Thank you.
Make sure to subscribe to our channel to get the latest news from Al Jazeera.